Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good morning, everybody. Christine Westerland here, Illinois Association of Community Action Agencies. It's good to have you all online with me here this morning. I hope that you can hear me. The broadcast is starting, so if things seem to be awry, please send me a note, and I will try to remediate that as we go through this webinar this morning. We're going to spend time today talking about community assessments. And I think the community assessments really are the critical piece of the work that we do. We often, I think, don't give as much attention to community assessments as we should. It really is a document that we must use probably on a daily basis. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I found this fun little infographic about assessment. And all these things that we do, perhaps with the exception of a curriculum map, because most of what you find online about assessments tends to be about education and learning. And I have a hand raised. Let me see here. I will. No, okay, no questions. I'll go ahead and log out of there. But we do have to be tied to many important things. We have to be willing to measure. We have to collect things. We have to begin looking at the information that's available to us, and how is it that we're building many of our opportunities as a result of our analysis. Is it measurable? These are questions that we need to ask. Some of this may be very familiar to you, especially if you are familiar with ROMA, and we'll talk about that some too. We'll make all these connections and really see how is it that everything that we do is really strongly related to one another, that how one process that we use informs the next, and how important it is that we do each of these processes as mindfully and as carefully as we possibly can. So we do know that one thing that has been shared with us in the organizational standards is that and I know this is at the risk of sounding repetitive, that the paragraph that precedes each of these standards, I think, is so important to the work that we do. And I've included this language, again, that precedes Category 3, community assessments, because I think it's important that we examine exactly what it is telling us. So look at what this says, and it says local control of federal CSBG resources is predicated on regular comprehensive community assessments that take into account the breadth of community needs as well as partners and resources available in a community to meet those needs. Regular assessment of needs and resources at the community level is the foundation of community action, and is a vital management and leadership tool. If we begin ignoring it, if we do not view it as a management or a leadership tool, then we are being dismissive of the community assessment process. Now, let me go back. It is a vital management and leadership tool that is used across the organization. And that means not just CSBG, but all of our other funding sources as well, and utilized by the community to set the course for both CSBG and all agency resources. And note that word too, community. That's a key piece, that this is really speaking to our engagement that we do have to undertake. So what does this all happens, or what happens rather, if there isn't an assessment? Well, how do we know that we're doing our work then? To me, it brings far more questions than that maybe we don't want to take on. If we are not doing an assessment, well, we are not tending or fulfilling our mission, something that's quite critical to our success. We're missing opportunities to assist. We are placed in communities in our service areas because we provide vital safety net resources to people of low income. And if we are missing those opportunities, then we are not doing our work. And it also is a signal that our collaborations that we currently have are simply not working well for us. And how is it that we can up our game and become more effective? So in many ways, it really does bring more questions to the front. So the importance of community assessment really is looking at this list. And I know that sometimes I make jokes about reading PowerPoints, but I'm going to go over each of these points. I think it's important for our thinking today. So it does create opportunities for community buy-in. It really is. Whenever you're building a community assessment process, and we'll talk about some of the methods or approaches that you can take, think about the conversations that you can have, perhaps with people that don't feel they had a voice or they have great opinions, but yet the opportunity had never presented themselves. It's a way to build strong collaborations and look at those opportunities for new alliances and making deeper connections with old partners and great new connections with new partners that have emerged on the scene. Together, you can form successful strategies. We cannot work in isolation. We understand that that simply does not work. We can ensure that these services meet the needs of our community. That's where we do have to take on these evaluation processes, surveys, and all sorts of things after the service is provided, so we understand that what it is that we have put in place is actually working, or where is it we need to fix it. We have to build credibility. I think that's critical. Even I think building credibility is a daily process for us, even within our own personal lives, but within our professional lives as well. Boards want guidance in making good decisions. I'm sure your board members are keen on trying to understand what's going on in the community, and they want to make the best possible decisions that they can. That's where a community assessment, a solid community assessment, is so critical. And it does guide staff training and educational planning. Perhaps you do have, within your community assessment, you have discovered there is a need for financial literacy classes. And are you structuring those types of classes? Do you have staff that are adequately trained so they can prepare those classes? Or do you have a strong partnership with a local bank that can help provide guidance on that? Again, looking at this from a broader perspective. Enhancing capacity to respond to change. That's what community action is all about. We were placed here in the War on Poverty in 1964 to affect community change. It's not accidental that community action is in our name. And so this is where we can find that place where it's that authentic response to change and that authentic input from stakeholders. That's what we need to hear from. We cannot sit in isolation, kind of pretend that we know what's going on in our communities. And we are informed people, there's no denying that, but we don't know it all. And that's where we always have to invite opportunities in for conversation with other partners, with other collaborators, with other groups, with other individuals who have an interest in the work that we do, and they may have something they're passionate about that they can help us with. And we do always need to think about causes and conditions of poverty. I think that is simply something that we must be devoted to daily. It might be a question of neighborhood safety or a public safety issue. It may be job opportunities that have gone away from the community because of industry leaving the area, or perhaps there are new opportunities that are coming in that perhaps that could create opportunities for employment. So this is where we really need to be mindful. And again, always scanning the environment, what's on the horizon, being in touch with those key community leaders and being a community leader ourselves. So what is it that we need to look at? Well, first in standard 3.1, and just to place this in your thinking, the standard category 3 is the same for both public and private agencies, that the organization has conducted a community assessment and issued a report within the last 3 years. I don't think there's much more that I can really say about that. I think that's very, very obvious. And issued the report. Remember that report is going out there. Honestly, if you do an annual report of your agency, look at your community assessment and use that for some of your reporting, or as a way to be invitational to gather more comments, more observations, more ideas. Again, every 3 years. Now, I know in Illinois it's every other year. I know that that's something that I think that we are so far exceeding in compliance. But I think one thing that we do need to really work on is really building stronger community assessments. And so we'll continue to discuss that. Standard number 2, or 3.2, I should say. As part of the community assessment. The organization collects and includes current data specific to poverty and its prevalence related to gender, age, and race ethnicity for their service areas. So we really are breaking it down by these specific areas, and perhaps we could break it down even more. But it's critical that we look at what's going on with our different age groups, with our different ethnic groups. What is it that we need to understand about issues that are facing men and women and families? And how is it that we can find those data sources that inform this collection? And so we do have a clear picture of exactly what the demographics of our community is. I think that's something that we are incumbent on the work that we do. Standard 3.3. The organization collects and analyzes both qualitative and quantitative data on its geographic service area in the community assessment. So we are looking at pairing together both story or narrative and numbers. So we understand and creating context for the work that we do. We're identifying need, really, in this analysis. We are trying to also articulate what it is that we need to do within our service area, within our communities, in order to make change, to think back to our mission statements in which we say that we're fighting poverty, that we're creating better communities, better opportunities. And how is it that we are tying it all back to that mission, which is critical for guiding all of the work that we do? Then we have standard 3.4. The community assessment includes key findings on the causes and conditions of poverty and the needs of the community served. So there you have it. You're looking at key findings. What is it that the data has told you? And we have to be very mindful of that. If we are unwilling to look at what the data has told us, and let me just go back here. Gina Stratford has just corrected me. It is every 3 years for the community assessment. Gina, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Christine?
I'm on a call.
Okay.
So,
can I put this person in your voicemail?
yes.
Okay.
So the community assessment really does have to articulate what the key findings are of the causes and conditions of poverty and the needs. We have to really be willing to stress that. And I have to say that sometimes when I look through community assessment plans, I'm not seeing a clear articulation of causes and conditions and the needs in the community. So be mindful of that. Those are presented to us because it's intentional, because it is, again, it's that articulation. We have to have context for the work that we do. That's absolutely critical to our success. That's where this assessment portion of it is always getting back to telling that story, telling our story. And then finally, the final standard in this category is that the governing board formally, 3.5, formally accepts the completed community assessment. Again, big piece of this, the governing board must always, could be your program committee if you're on the public side, but you have to formally accept the completed community assessment. Again, the governing board needs to make those critical decisions. They need to understand what it is they need to do to move forward. What is it that's so important to the work of the entire agency? How is it that they are looking at the mission? And how is it that they're reading this assessment and understanding this assessment so they can articulate to those stakeholders, because remember, they're representing you out in the community, what it is the program or the agency's plans are in order to address needs within the community. It really is a critical cycle, and I can't emphasize that enough. And so I can't help it, but there it is. There's the Roma cycle, thinking back to it. What is it? The work that we do is all ongoing. It's always cyclical. The work is something that we should be tending to on a daily basis. I think that many of the instructions that I see about community assessments and thinking about the work that we do, that assessments should be something that we do daily, that we're always thinking about planning, looking always at implementation and what works well, looking at our achievement of results. Are we really observing and reporting progress, whether it's positive or negative or neutral? And then how is it that we evaluate our data? How is it that we're comparing it with benchmarks? You know, we typically, when we are doing planning, we set a baseline and then we do incrementally what our benchmarks are so we can move towards success. And are we meeting those benchmarks? So that's where assessment's critical. And also placing in here is that we're not only assessing what our families need, but we're assessing what our community needs are. You know, we have to be looking at issues of like job creation. We're looking at economic development, community development. Maybe it's an issue about public safety. Maybe it's building some stronger collaboration at our local public and private schools. Perhaps there's some healthcare organizations that we understand there's neighborhoods or people who need assistance or access to healthcare. So that's where it is that we really need to be mindful of this. And thinking about this whole assessment cycle, we can't drop off any part of this. Each of these are weighted very much the same. We have to follow each of these, and we can't just jump into one and skip the other. We have to do it. If we're not, this is what demonstrates our success. This is what really captures the work that we do, telling our story, informing our work. How is it that we can move this work forward and we can articulate not only to our stakeholders and our communities and to our governing boards, but how is it that we're sharing our story from a statewide perspective? How is it that we're sharing our story from a national perspective? Our programs have always been challenged. We know that very well. We're currently in a period in which I think we are experiencing some challenges once again. And by doing our work up front, by making sure that assessment is as clear and as concise and has all the moving pieces articulated, then we have a great document that really becomes, as it said in the instruction, that vital leadership, management and leadership tool that allows us to move our work forward. I think in many ways, this is really where we could do our own self-assessments, in which we have already put together our planning document. Now, how is it then that we go back perhaps on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, like I said, using it continuously so we can discover if we're moving in the right direction, if we need to make some adjustments and some change. So we are moving forward. Perhaps the original design of a program was not as concise or clear as it should have been. So thinking about those connections and have a willingness to make those connections and talk about them. So this is a conversation I know that we've had multiple times, in which there really is a need for tools. And I can tell you that there's quite a bit of conversation taking place both here. I don't want to say too much, but at the state level, at the association level, certainly in the Roma cohort process, we are talking about the need for multiple tools that will allow agencies to move forward with this. How is it that we can write a survey or provide surveys that not only can discover what your community action customers or potential customers' needs are, but also what the stakeholders are thinking? What is it that board members are thinking, and how is it that we can gather all this data from a standardized process? And so we can analyze our trends looking at that information. How is it that we put together good focus groups and conduct those focus groups so they are useful for the work that we do in informing our community assessments? And perhaps this might even be a place where partnerships may actually emerge. We may want to interview key individuals within our communities, within our service areas, to perhaps discover what is needed. You know, you may have a local leader who doesn't have time perhaps, or doesn't take the time to talk with a focus group or a survey, but they love to have one-on-one conversations. That's typically true, I can tell you that. And so schedule time for interviews, documenting it, recording it perhaps if with their permission, so you do have that articulation of what it is they're thinking. Looking at other organizations that have other planning processes and documents. I know that Head Start has to do a community assessment. I know that United Way does a community assessments. Many other organizations do community assessments as well. And so have a willingness to perhaps share documentation, and that might take a deeper relationship, a deeper collaboration. But we have to be the lead. I think that's part of the instructions that we've been talking about. Remember back to categories 1 and 2, particularly category 2, which is community engagement. And the instruction really did say in that introductory paragraph that we're the leaders. And so we have to, that to me means that we're being invitational, that we have to be the ones that say, let's put this event together. And also, the expectation should never be that we expect you to come to us. We want to come to you. And I think that is showing up where people are present rather than having the expectation they're going to find the time to come see us. And I think that changes the relationship too. So I would put that out there just for your thinking, for your consideration. So it is, how is it that we can position ourselves as the people who lead the questions, the people who lead the inquiry into the needs within our community. And there's also many online resources that are out there that can support our work. Many of you may be familiar with the Community Commons. This is something that's on the Community Action Partnership's website. It's community, and I believe that Amy Spies spoke to it when she did her session back in at the May meeting, the ICA conference, in which she introduced it to you. The Community Commons was something that the Missouri Community Action Association put together in collaboration with the University of Missouri. It is now available on the partnership's webpage. It's a great place to pull data together. You can put in zip codes and do all sorts of wonderful data sets that way. Beautiful resource. The Heartland Alliance, they're online. You can put in your county, and that gives you there's a little search engine. There's a great way that you can pull out information that are about information specific to your county, which falls into your service areas, obviously. We all know about census.gov. I'm not going to say anything else about that. And obviously, I think SurveyMonkey, I'm hearing more and more agencies using SurveyMonkey as an emerging tool. This might be a way that you could use SurveyMonkey across all of your stakeholders, whether it's a customer, whether it's a board member, whether it's a partner agency, perhaps it's local churches or what have you, to begin pulling in that information that's so critical for our work. One thing that we have to sometimes think about or position ourselves to do is thinking about asking really good questions. And this actually list of questions is taken from the Community Needs Assessment Toolkit that was put together by the Missouri Association for Community Action. It was done in 2009, and it goes into deeper learning about how to set up focus groups, how to create invitations, how to create surveys. And it's actually a tool that you can get from the Missouri Community Action Association's webpage. But starting everything, I think all of our work should always start with great questions. So think about this, and these questions can be tailored or tweaked to your community, to the audience that you're working with. But what would we do? What would our community look like without poverty? And I think that's a great visionary question that really generates, positive conversation. And then what will emerge through that conversation is that follow-up question: what keeps families in poverty? So again, thinking about issues of public safety, jobs, location of institutions. Maybe the service agencies that are in your area are not conveniently located to one another, and having conversations like that. Then the next question that comes up: what should we as a community do to address poverty? And it's kind of that question of, we're all in this together, really. And so that's an invitational question in and of itself. How do you define poverty? I think that's a provocative question because everyone defines it quite differently. We know that. We know that as people who are professionals working in poverty and poverty experts. But I think it's always critical for our thinking to know that there are other definitions and thinking about poverty that may influence our thinking about poverty, to really be willing to ask that. And then the look of poverty in your county is, and again, a very provocative, very generative question that sometimes we have that unwillingness to ask that. And these could be used in the focus group setting. These could be used, I would say, if you have a local community college, this would be a great place to have one of those conversations. Again, because we have to be willing to go out rather than expect people to come in to see us. And I'm going to emphasize that again and again, because there are opportunities all over your communities every day that you could go and spend some time in conversation, asking good questions. And we can spend some more time on that at a later date and be happy to have conversations with you about how to generate good open-ended questions. So, and here's probably the elephant in the room is how is it that we're going to analyze all of this data? And that's a great question, isn't it? And I think this is kind of the perception, this little cartoon is kind of a perception of what we have in our minds about we're going to get everything that we can and we'll think about it later. There are many different approaches to analysis. Oftentimes, the suggestion is that you find one that works best. Perhaps you do it through trend analysis. Maybe you do it through force field. There's a 5-fold practice, which is kind of an interesting way to really have information emerge to the surface. Do you do environmental scans? There are just multiple ways that you can do it. But the question is that once you have analyzed everything, the next question that does emerge then is what is it that we're doing to meet the need? Who are our customers? What is it that they value? And that's really the questions that we are addressing. And I have to think that that should be a critical piece of our work. Now, having said all of this, I will say that we will talk more about data and analysis when we get to category 9. Now that webinar is not scheduled until this December, but I can tell you that we are actively working on how is it that we can up our game in looking at not only the gathering of data, but how is it that we can analyze our data. And we'll be able to provide some more educational opportunities on how that is being done as we move forward through this process. Now, the next thing that I just want to share with you a little bit for those of you who are planning on attending the June 3rd session here, Writing Meaningful Community Needs Assessments with Amy Spies. These are the things that she has asked. And just to remind all of you that this is really going to be a focus on the effective use of sources and the development of a compelling narrative. She is expecting a hands-on and interactive session. So in order to facilitate that, she's asking the following. If some of you came to her session that she provided just a couple of weeks ago, she asked you to do 2 lists in the classroom. And if you still have those lists, bring those with you. Bring laptops. If you don't have laptops, we do have a couple that are available if you need them. Your most recently completed community assessment, or I have CAN on there, but it's CNA, Community Needs Assessment. Paper, and if you don't have any paper, don't worry about that. I'm sure we can help you out with that, as well as pens and pencils and a calculator, which can be on your phone. The session does begin at 9 a.m. and it will end at 4. Again, that's June 3rd, so that is just 2 weeks away, and I'm really looking forward to that session. So, and really just to kind of summarize this, is that really all assessment is a perpetual work in progress. We are always assessing, even when we think about our roles in our own personal lives, we're always making decisions based on our assessments. And I think if we kind of look at it from that perspective, it makes it a little bit easier for us. We are experts at assessment. We are always thinking about what is it that we need to do next to get to that next step in our lives. And so it's something that we actually do quite naturally. And think about it from that perspective, perhaps gives you a little sigh of relief. And what can I also say to assure you that I think that the work that we currently are doing is good. We always have to take the opportunity to improve our work. And we are looking at this from a way in which we're trying to make things work interchangeably. How is it that one links to the other? To really create this kind of whole systems approach where our work flows, is that we're not stopping and working at something suddenly, that we're really committed to this really looking at this really nice system that all the gears are engaged and we're moving forward together. So that is really the gist of community assessments, and just to put this date out here for all of you, June 16th, 2015. That is our next organizational standards webinar. It's going to be focused on category 4, organizational leadership. It starts at 10 a.m. and I try to keep these to a half an hour to 45 minutes, so that way I know that you don't spend too much time, but yet you've gotten a little bit of information. And just to point this out to you, that this webinar is indeed on a Tuesday and not a Wednesday. So I just want to say thanks to all of you for participating and listening in today and bringing clarity. This session has been recorded, so if you need it, I can send this on to you for your assistance. And if you haven't yet signed up for the June 3rd session, you can do so. If you need the link to that, just drop me an email. You know how to get a hold of me. So thank you all for your attention today, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Take care.